Hi guys, what's up? It's Will here, and I'm here for some quick picks for UFC 294. Overall, I think it's a really solid card with obviously some great fights up top and some great fights throughout. I actually think the card's benefited from the late scratches, obviously to the main event, to the co-main event. But yeah, really solid card. Let's get into it from here. Great fight to start the card. Bruno Silva against Sharabutin Magomedov. Sharabullet, a guy that I mentioned on Fighters you should watch. I think it was 2020 around about when COVID hit. You should really keep an eye on this dude. And he's went on, he's undefeated. Really got a good opportunity to come in here. I think the UFC kind of know what they're doing in a tough matchup. I will say that. But a matchup I think that's a really good starting point for Sharabullet in the UFC. And I think he has all the kind of A side in this one where he can make himself a top 15 fighter within the next year. I firmly believe if he keeps active, I think he's going to have trouble getting into the US, so he's going to have to be relying on maybe European cards. They're talking about going to Saudi Arabia in early 2024. So this is the kind of cards I think we'll see him in. I don't think we'll see him in America. But like I said, I think he can become a top 15 fighter. And this one here, I think he beats Bruno Silva. I think he's got an unbelievable kicking game. It's something that he's always had. He's always been a little bit lacking behind with his striking, with his hands and so on. But overall, I think this is just a good matchup for him. With the range that he has, with the variation with his kicks, he does have elbows. He does have some great knees in the clinch if he can get you up against the cage. In fact, anywhere that he gets a clinch, he can really hurt you. Bruno Silva, to me, I thought in that Alex Pereira fight, I thought he gave a really good account of himself. It was like going 2 years ago. I think he won that first round, then started to take and accumulate some damage. And he's been taking losses, got dropped a couple of times there against Jeremy Short. Brendan Allen got to him as well. This is going to be Shara's coming out party, I think, in the UFC. I'm looking actually, I think that he can stop Bruno Silva, but I honestly think that maybe the decision might be the best thing. I love the over 1.5, which is sitting minus 130 at the minute. That's something that I might play. And I honestly might play Sharabullet by decision, but he could get a knockout here and come out and make a statement in his UFC debut. So I'm still kind of looking at that decision line, which I think is plus 350, I want to say. But Sharabullet is going to be my pick in that one there. Jinh Yu Frey against Viktoriia Dudakova. I think it's the clear win, I think, for Dudakova. I bet at minus 300. She's like minus 600 now, which is kind of crazy, honestly. But I think that she gets the job done here. The UFC really would like this girl to kind of progress forward here. I can't see them really setting this fight up really for Jinh Yu Frey. She is probably close to like 40, like 38 years. So the side here that they want is Dudakova to win this one. I think that she will get takedowns in this fight. I think she will get them. And once she gets there, I think she will be the bigger girl. And I think she will find a submission at some point. So for me, Viktoriia Dudakova is, I didn't realize her record was 11-9. That's wild. I think that she extends her unbeaten run here, and she will move on to being 8-0 in the UFC. Jinh Yu Frey, I think will be long gone after this one, but Nathaniel Wood against Mohammad Naimov. This to me was a weird one when I heard this fight get put together, because from the performances I've seen from Nathaniel Wood at 145, I thought he would have got himself a bigger opposition in this one. A guy potentially moving himself into that top 15, if not very close to it. But this is a matchup here where he's taking a little bit of a risk because he is lying accordingly, like he's minus 300. I think he should be round about there. But what's the main thing with Nathaniel Wood that you have to worry about? I think overall as a fighter, he's better than Naimov. But the one thing that always sets Wood apart a little bit is that he can be hit and he can be dropped and he can be hurt. And that's going back to the Cage Warriors days. He was dropped a couple of times back there when he was a champion. Been dropped a couple of times in the UFC, been stopped there. But since he's run up 145, I thought he's looked great. Took too many shots against Feely last time out, who's a little bit of a rangy striker. I think outside of really getting hurt in this fight, like with a big punch, I think that's Naimov's path to victory is KO or bust. For me, I think that there's a massive disparity on the ground. If Wood gets there, I think submission is plus 400. That's something that I'm looking at closely, but I think Wood wins the fight. I've got him parlayed. I actually had a 3-team parlay with him, Dudikova, both at minus 300, and it was Khamzat when he was fighting Paulo Costa, but obviously it's a two-leg parlay now. So I'm pretty confident that comes through, but just don't get hurt. If Wood doesn't get hurt, I think that he wins this fight pretty comprehensively. So I've got Nathaniel Wood for the win there. Anshul Jubli against Mike Breeden. Nowadays I don't really watch all the fights on the card. There's fights that I will target more than others, and this is when I was like, an Indian dude coming in here off the road to the UFC against Mike Breeden. First thought, oh, maybe I want this Indian dude to win, and I was like, then I kind of reined that back. I was like, that's just silly thinking on my part. And then I kind of had that thought of like Indian fighters in the UFC, Bharat Kandari and Arjun Bula. I was like, these guys don't pan out well, and it's not a good local scene whatsoever. The local scene in India, I think, is piss poor, really not good. And they've just signed an Indian girl who is also piss poor, not very good. And then I watched this Jubli guy, and I was not impressed whatsoever. I think that he is I think that he can quit himself a little bit, honestly. I thought in that fight with the Korean dude, I forgot his name, he was getting taken down. I think it was in the second round there. The coach really had to pep him up to go into that third round. Got the victory nonetheless. Then fought Jake Saragi, where it's pretty obvious that Saragi really didn't have any chops of being on the ground, like literally had nothing down there, and he went ahead and won that one. But I think Mike Breeden, although being terrible himself and not great, I shouldn't say terrible because he's a top-class fighter at the end of the day in the biggest promotion in the world. He has come off 3 losses to 3 fairly decent guys. McKenna, we know what he's about. Levy's a solid dude, and Hernandez, when he wants to be, can be a tough out. This is the easiest fight he's had in the UFC. Obviously, I think that, this betting line to me, I couldn't believe it when it was plus. When I looked at it, it was like plus 300, and I was like, do I really want to look into this fight? And I looked into it, and I think Breeden can win this fight. So I actually went and laid a bet on Mike Breeden. I got plus 260, which I still think is the side I would want to add if I had a bet on this one. So I put some money down on this one, a pretty sizable underdog. I don't think that he should be. I think if this fight, if we can get through this first round, I think Breeden can come in there and take this guy out late. So I'm taking Mike Breeden, not like saying that he's going to come out here and look fantastic, but I think he can win the fight. At plus 260, I'm willing to find out. So Mike Breeden is going to be my pick and bet there that I've got there. Sedriques Dumas against Abu Azaitar. I really wanted to fade Sedriques Dumas, but then you look at Azaitar, what he's been doing, not been doing a hell of a lot over the last 5 years. Does he really want it as bad as what Dumas really wants at this point? I don't think he does. The Azaitar brothers come from a kind of playboy background. They know a lot of people. Then a lot of money has been put behind them. They've got a lot of money themselves. They fly around in flash cars, all that. Does he really want it? This is fighting in the UAE, which will be massive for him fighting there. But I think Dumas will just want it a little bit more, honestly. I really like to come in here, fade as Dumas, because I don't think he's a great prospect, honestly, but he's a guy that obviously wants to do well in the UFC. Took that fight last time, wasn't a great fight against Cody Brundage, did what he had to do, get that win out there, see if he can build on that. He's been brought over here to the UAE. This is a big stage on a pay-per-view card against a kind of local scene guy. I think he does enough here, so I'll pick Sedriques Dumas for the win. Javid Basharat against Victor Henry. Good fight. Javid and his brother Farid are, I think, and I've been saying this for years, I think they were superstars. I think they're really good, solid fighters. And I've said from the get-go, in my preference, Farid is the better fighter of the two. But that's taking nothing away from Javid, who is very, very solid in every aspect. But there is a little few chinks in his armor that can be exploited. And especially against someone like Victor Henry, who is the uber veteran, who's been around many fights all over the world, Japan, fought good guys in the States. And in the UFC, when he shows up, he can be a handful for a lot of people. I just think for me, Javid's going to just do enough. But like I say, the betting line like that, I mean, I've seen a lot of really good cappers bet the Henry side take a shot. I mean, I think he's higher than minus 425, like it states there. Um, I think Javid just does enough in this one here. I think that he wins a close fight. He might lose a round. I think he'll win a decision. I saw the decision was minus 125, and I've kind of been tempted by that a little bit, but I might just stay off this fight and see kind of how he does against a guy that's going to be there for the full 15 minutes. He's going to give him problems on the feet, maybe give him problems on the feet, maybe stop some takedowns, whatever it may be. And Javid, to me, doesn't look like a guy that stops a super amount of people, especially at the UFC level. But I think that he does enough to win the fight here. So Javid Basharat for the win. Mohammad Yahya against Trevor Peek. I think Trevor Peek wins this one, but I don't want to bet him at the line. They say the minus 115. If you get it, the plus number that he was at, he was like plus 140, then you're all for it. Wasn't super impressed. Obviously, we kind of rely on the guy, but I think Trevor Peek's just got a little bit too much for him. Like I said, I didn't look into this one all that much. So just as a prediction, it's going to be Trevor Peek. But he is fighting a guy coming out the fights out the UAE. He's going to have a lot of support there. But Trevor Peek is going to make this a brawl, and I think eventually he's going to land some killer shots and put Yahya down. So Trevor Peek for the win there for me. Tim Elliott against Mohammad Mokaev. And it genuinely feels like I've been following Mohammad Mokaev for years. I remember this kid 2014 in Manchester. For the life of me, how old is he? So he must have been about 14 at the time. 14, 15 at the time, I think it must have been, and he was looking for tickets for the UFC, and somehow we managed, the group of people we managed to get him a ticket, and like I say, I heard about that kid years ago on the streets of Manchester when I was down there, and he's came through here undefeated as an army, now undefeated as a professional, shown he's got a lot of great determination, depth within his skill set, a really good wrestler. I think he needs to work in some certain aspects with his top game, and this is the biggest fight of his career against another uber kind of veteran, and Tim Elliott, who is awkward, can give you fits on his day, but he is a guy that I think that eventually Mohammad might have a little bit of problems initially early on in the fight, but I think as the longer this fight goes on, I think he will get takedowns. I think he will get to kind of dominant positions where he'll have opportunities to submit Tim Elliott. And a couple of days ago, I wasn't really too bullish. I thought Tim Elliott might have a little bit more of a chance. But for me, I think the longer this fight goes on, I think more Mokaev comes into it. I think his grappling will be a little bit more domineering. I think he's got an opportunity to find a submission here. I remember looking at the line for the submission. I think it was plus 220. A little tempted by that. But I mean, he's making his way up the rankings at such a young age, doing a lot of work, coming back after that injury against Philo, where it looks like he got his knee shredded to bits, but managed to kind of keep going there and find the submission. That was 6 months ago. So a quick turnaround, really, after the injury that I had. I'm going to take Mokaev via decision. Said Nurmagomedov against Muin Gafurov. I've been talking about Muin Gafurov for a long time, saying he should be in the UFC, and this was before the loss to Chad and Hellinger away back on the Dana White Contender Series, which, when you look at it now, it's not the greatest loss in the world. And then he came back, fought a couple of really bad guys. These guys weren't great, but then came in there, gave John Castaneda. I remember betting him there, thinking he's got a decent chance, and eventually the short notice kind of really showed up in John Castaneda. It's a pretty solid fighter himself. Saeed's always a guy I've had a couple of good opportunities of betting on him. I bet him against, say, Jacob there. Was kind of getting beat, but then found that glorious choke that he's got. Bet him there against Jonathan Martinez, and I thought if he just had a little bit more, he could have won that fight. I think this will be close, but I think that early on, I think Saeed will do enough over the first 2 rounds, and Muin maybe comes into it later on in the fight and maybe takes a round off him. But for me, I think the submission is open there for Saeed. More likely, I think it'll be a decision. So Saeed Nurmagomedov for the win in that one there. Ikram Aliskerov against Warlley Alves. I think this is a good fight for Aliskerov. I bet against him last time against Phil Hawes, and I thought Phil Hawes was actually doing all right, but then the typical Phil Hawes thing. It doesn't take much. You just find the button one time. It's done and dusted. That's what he did, and a devastating knockout there with his only loss in his record as well, coming against Khamzat. Chimaev looks a pretty solid prospect, especially at middleweight. Warlley, Alves, I couldn't believe this guy was 32 years old. I was like, this guy, I feel like I've been watching this guy for absolute years, and I have, but he feels like he's been around for 10 years plus. I couldn't tell you the exact amount of time he's been around, but he has been around, and he's got some fairly decent wins on his resume. Lazez, obviously Colby back in the day. But I think coming in short notice, his gas tank's never been great. Dangerous initially early on. I think as this fight moves into rounds 2 and 3, I think Aliskerov's just overall game will come here, and I think he'll probably find a submission or a knockout in rounds 2 or 3. So Aliskerov for the win there. We've got Johnny Walker against Magomed Ankalaev in the light heavyweight division here. And I don't know how many times I've tried to probably bet against Ankalaev in some certain spots. Nikita Krylov, but I bet Nikita Krylov fights all the time. Very, very solid overall fighter. I think that I would like to see the berserker style of kind of Johnny Walker coming here. I think that him being like this super reserved guy, I don't think he's really found the balance of being the kind of berserker that he was to the kind of point fighter that he can be, and not be as explosive and aggressive as he once was. But I just think that Ankalaev's got a little bit too much for him here. I think he can best him on the feet. I think he can hurt him on the feet. I think he can take him to the ground. I think he can dominate him on the ground. So overall, I think that Magomed Ankalaev is the side here, and I think he'll get himself a title shot in due course with a win here. But there's a big opportunity for Johnny Walker. He beats Ankalaev here. He moves up to the number 1 guy in that division and looking for a title shot himself. But for me, I'm going to take Magomed Ankalaev. Kamaru Usman against Khamzat Chimaev in the middleweight division. Both guys moving up. So that's a little bit of a variable here. It's like both guys, I think obviously Khamzat's fought that weight before the UFC, and Kamaru at some point has probably fought that weight. But he was a welterweight king for a long, long time. Got dethroned, knocked out, obviously, by Leon Edwards. And then I thought he had a terrible display against Leon in the second fight. I watched that back today, and I was like, I couldn't really remember how bad a performance it was. He just didn't look in there. He looked a step behind. Obviously, there was talks of an injury going into that one, and he does look like there's talks of an injury going into this one. There was something that popped up yesterday, which looked to me, like you said, something popped in his knees, and his knees are absolutely terrible anyway. Elite kind of takedown defense, going to need it here, I think, against Khamzat, who I think has got superhuman strength with his grappling. I think that he can get massive takedowns. I don't think it was the greatest look his last fight against Gilbert Burns, because I thought that if he was a little bit more taking his time, I thought he could take out Gilbert Burns, which I think he can do, but he was desperate to throw down, make that an absolute brawl of a fight, and he did. It was a great fight nonetheless. I thought he was going to run through Paulo Costa in the initial fight that was made. I don't know. I don't think I really want to bet anything in Chimaev's side. I was looking at submission at I think it was plus 300. But I think that a stoppage inside the distance is very, very possible here. I think he'll take down Usman, and I think that he'll have opportunities for submissions or TKO. So I'm going to lean on the Chimaev side. But like I said, I don't think I'm going to have any money in this fight, and we'll see where Chimaev goes, because I think if you were to put him and Sean Strickland together, I think he would absolutely run through Sean Strickland. So Chimaev is the side for me there. Islam Makhachev against Alexander Volkanovski for the UFC Lightweight Championship, the rematch, which took place this year down under in Australia, in a fight that a lot of people, I've seen people give that for Volkanovski, and when I watched it back, I think it was, to me, it was at the very least 3-2. For me, I probably scored it 4-1 on the Islam Makhachev side, but Volkanovski did make it so competitive and so close, like you'd expect. But this, to me, here, coming in here on 12 days' notice, coming off a pretty serious surgery for a fight that he definitely wasn't getting ready for. I think he was looking at getting ready for a January fight in Canada against Topuria, and there's talks that he might still take that fight depending on how this goes. if he comes out clean from it. I think Islam, he had some sticky spots in that fight, but I still think he won pretty convincingly, in my opinion. And now you're getting him, I think I bet him at -225. I've got him parlayed up with Shara Bullet to start off the card, for like +117, I think it is. I think that even if you can get I think it's maybe sitting like -275, I still think that's some good value in that, honestly. I think that he's going to dominate this fight. I think that he's going to just be a step ahead in Abu Dhabi. Not unless Volkanovski comes out here. He has to come out here and knock him out, in my opinion, or submit him if he can. I just don't see that happening. So for me, Islam Makhachev is going to win this second fight with these two and cement himself as one of the best guys at 155 there's ever been. And then obviously he's got some other guys to take out, but he's going to be around for a little bit of time, and he's going to give himself many good fights in the UFC as a champion. So Islam Makhachev is going to be my pick there. I'm just trying to decide how he's going to do it. I've got a funny feeling he's going to do it inside the distance. Don't know how. Submission, TKO, whether it be ground and pound or whatever it may be, or submission. I've got a feeling he's going to, in the mid part of this fight, rounds 3 and 4, he's going to take out Volkanovski, in my opinion. So, guys, that's my picks for UFC, quick picks for UFC 294, which 20 minutes here, 21 minutes. Appreciate you guys for watching this if you do. And I'll catch you very, very soon for the Brazil card in a couple of weeks where Jailton Almeida against Derek Lewis. Take care.